Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. I would like to thank Aapresid for inviting us to speak here today. I am Carlos Steiger. I am an economist, director of the Agribusiness MBA at the Universidad Austral, and professor and researchers at the Agribusiness Center. It is an honor to be here today because Aapresid has always been a pioneer in this innovation process for the agricultural sector with the adoption of technologies. And somehow we've come a long way from the 90s, where the great agricultural revolution started in Argentina with biotechnology, R&R soy, BT corn, no-till, soil conservation, etc., that generated this package that actually took a leap in Argentinian productivity, combining no-tillage, fertilization, and biotech. Then with precision agriculture, the use of GPS, yield monitoring, sensors in machinery, soil maps, etc., and management of environments, we took another step. And now we are at a new era, and I would say the most disruptive one. And this is the era of digitalization and big data. And through the use of management platforms, sensors, satellite images, AI, and predictive models, I would say that there's a new thing going on. And the key topic here is talent. The agricultural sector is going through an unprecedented transformation. Less people, more automation, more networks. And in this scenario, human resources become strategic. So this panel with these amazing colleagues will talk about the following. How can we capture, train, and retain talent in this context? We have three amazing speakers for today: Juan Pablo Vélez, Enriqueta Gilbeloni, and Santiago Torn. So to start, I would like to ask a first question. In your experience, what is the main difficulty that agricultural companies might face to capture and retain talent? Well, in our experience at Agro, what we see is like a detour, in terms of what is the need for a value proposition of companies with talent. So there we see gaps. In fact, we are conducting a survey now for a master's degree where we are asking people, what is it that you value when joining a company? And what we see is that for companies, it's hard to find what's important for the talent. And these are basic issues, there are companies telling us there are agricultural engineers, but they do not wanna lead on the countryside. So basic things about flexibility or flexibility, and to talk about the value proposition to see what are my priorities. Is it talent? Is it the location? So there is a gap there, and here we are rethinking in the organizations how to attract and how to make sure that in my company the internal environment can be attractive enough for other people to want to join us. So attracting others is very important, because there are small companies that are becoming more well known. And it's important then to try and detect where the gap is when proposing or offering a job. But these basic aspects have to be considered, like benefits. We also see the retention part, where people really value the environment, leadership, development, development. That is something that we're going to be discussing with these other speakers, right? That is crucial. Great. Thank you so much. Santiago, that was a good intro. Thank you. I have a cheat sheet here. I didn't bring slides, but there are things that I wanted to mention. As you explained, I created a consultancy company 3 years ago, Mecatech, and I've been a professor for 12 years, and I train people, train students. And also I train heavy machinery workers, technicians, business people. I cover all the parts of this wide range. So you said, or the first point that you posed was capturing talent, right? So I work with many contractors of agricultural machinery, and what you hear usually is them saying, I do not have any people to work. I bought a $700,000 piece of machinery and I have no one to drive it. So what we see here is that there are not enough training centers for skilled workers, and this could be taking place in universities or technical schools, agri-technical schools. So I feel that there's this gap about training. In Cordoba, for example, there is now a school for workers. But what happens is that we try and find people from small towns and like, oh no, I know this guy because he's the son of the cafe owner. So I take this guy to a very technological machine. They do not feel comfortable. And 15 days after he leaves, because he was not told that he was supposed to stay there and the house was not so comfortable. So I would say that capturing talent is hard, but not because there are not enough people, because there are very good people everywhere, from the north to the south of the country. But what I feel is like there are not enough communication channels to find the right talents, and there is a lack of training centers. And in the training that we are offering, we are trying to help people to learn how to explore their talent. And in terms of retention, I will give the floor to Juan, but let me say one thing. Training is key. Regardless of the salary or the participation of the person in the business, training is super important. We have automated machines, and this is happening at the field or at the technological level. We know that there are digital natives over there, and we are forgetting about the basics, how to fix the harvester and how maybe an issue with the machine that is a technical one can impact on the technological side as well. So people might get tired, and then retention gets complicated. Thank you, Juan Pablo. Yeah, from my perspective, I work in training too. Santi works more in training in mechanics, and I am in the digital world. And let me tell you, processes have been so fast in the past few years. We've been through so many changes. And in this regard, capturing talent is not easy. And finding the right people is not easy either. First, because they need to be comfortable working in the agricultural scenario with the different routines and characteristics specifically of the agribusiness. And when talking about technology, we need to talk about the quality of the yield monitors, information quality, and in farms, and because of AI, this is very critical, all the information that we gather is very valuable. And therefore, we need to offer the right conditions for those gathering or generating the information so that they can work in the long term. Therefore, we need to know that sometimes working out there in the field is not easy. You need to go out there and plant and harvest and spray. And it's not easy, you know? It's not at the best possible time or the most comfortable time. And the experiences that I am having with young people is that they like challenges and they like innovation. And companies then are forced to having continuous change and evolution. Let me give you a practical example that is really affecting me right now, which is to find people that can be comfortable piloting drones. It wasn't super hard. I mean, we did have people that were not what we were expecting, but you know what? Technology called our attention, so it wasn't that hard. And technology was like making people feel, okay, I finished high school, but now I have the chance to be a certified drone pilot. So this is like a vindication opportunity or an opportunity for them to do things that maybe they thought were impossible for them. Technology is that sort of enabler. And for us in this field, we need to have continuous innovation so that young people don't get bored, because we know how easy it is for them to get bored and find another job. And it's not only about salaries, you know? Salaries are important, but also they get bored. They do not want to get bored. They don't want to have every day being the same. They do not want to wake up every day at the same time, go to the office. They don't like that. They like for their boss to offer a challenge. They like to have a drone of 30 and then move on to a 50. They like to do training sessions. This is what they like, and this is what will help us achieve evolution in the labor force. Working with new generations is a challenge, and this is what I see. And together with all of this, training. Training, which is another topic that I believe that we need to address.
Yeah, and this is closely connected to the value proposal to bring talent, what development plan can be presented, and something that you mentioned already in terms of what you find there. But I think that training, and we often say that we try not only to form but to transform people. What do you think can be attractive in order to attract talent in terms of training? What can a company somehow offer them in terms of training? What that implies their transformation as individuals and as professionals. Well, much aligned with what we discussed. I think that technology and innovation is something that clearly motivates the youth. And there also the big dilemma that companies are having is how we manage not only to train but also to give spaces for this growth and development. So a young man that is now a year or 2 years doing the same thing, probably he will seek his growth in another company. That person will look for something else outside the company. Now, if we train that person and we see the possibility of maintaining the talent in that growth plan, perhaps in some companies in the sector, they tell me, I don't, as in a big corporation, I don't have 80 positions above me to grow. But sometimes you don't need to change the name of the position, but you need to add a challenge or ask them to lead a project. It's great to tell the youth, well, you can lead this project and you can be responsible for certain things. Of course, that also goes aligned with a higher salary, but aligning those things because at some point that they will be the engine of what we need as an organization to innovate. Perfect. Yeah, that's the idea. Now, what do you think, Santiago, then, in terms of training and education? Where should we target? I mean, that can generate those two things, doing their work, but also realizing that they are growing as professionals, as individuals, and feeling part of the change. Well, again, my focus today is, although I train professionals in a little part of a course that has more than 40 subjects, and I love it, that's why I do it, and every year I have the possibility of adding value to those youth. But then referring to the human capital, the diversity out there, as Juan said, we not only have diversity for training people 50 or 60 years old that are operating machineries, or people that are 22 years old that have a different mindset, and perhaps they don't have the knowledge of the process, but they are much more eager to find new ways. In fact, many of the demands we have for training do not come from the businesses, but from the operators themselves that see us in the social media and send us a message saying, I want to be trained on this. But I think that training is key. It happens a lot with us that we go and train people that we don't know. I mean, I know nothing about their lives. And when you stay in a company, when you can see their faces 3 or 4 times in the year, it's not just that they feel what you mentioned projects, because they have the project sewing. I mean, you are responsible for this sewing machinery, and the training gives that person the value, the certainty, the that because that's what they do all day long. They do, I mean, 8-hour shifts or 10-hour shifts, and they always thinking, perhaps some of you do this, or sometimes they have an issue they cannot solve. So training and finding the common sense helps unlock that and helps them grow. And that is the most valuable part for us. It's essential. And to add to what he said, the certificate, well, this machine operator or drone operator or any example. I mean, saying, I've been doing this for 20 years now, but somebody recognizes that this possibility of acknowledgement. Imagine a person that didn't have the chance to be trained, to be educated, didn't have those possibilities to be acknowledged for their merit, for their progress, and having a certificate. And they ask you, do they issue certificates? Yeah, but it doesn't say university. It's agri. It's okay. It's very important for me. They value that, and they wear it as a badge. And but you have to put yourselves in their position. So the possibility of acknowledging them, and technology helps a lot there. I remember an anecdote now to finish. It happened to me once that I went to the little house of a person that attended the certificate, and there the certificate was on the wall. It was framed. If you go to the no a truck driver or the one that distributes fertilizers, they show them the certificate. Then, well, you should see if they're really trained or not. But when you give them the tools, they feel more valued, and this leads to other things. Perhaps if there's a turnover of people and they say, well, I'm prepared for this because I've used all the machines, I have the experience, I can be responsible for the whole team. And there are many cases like that. That's a key aspect in any company that operates machinery. The person that operates the machinery, that sends information to the middle management, or to the one that makes important decisions that imply a lot of money sometimes. That's our vision about training. Very good. And there's another aspect. We've seen these two parts that are very important, but out of all this technological disruptive change, because not only what the formal trainings offer is not always what the market is demanding. So what do you think? What are I mean, the talent is something innate, but it can also be developed. You have to combine talent and training. What do you think? In this new farming and the digitalization with all this technology, that then we're going to analyze what type of talent is required now, what profile is required, so that for us in education, we should be aware of what is demanded. Sometimes what we offer is not exactly what is demanded. So from your perspective, what do you think? What are the necessary talents and the necessary trainings required by this technological model? It's not easy to define one talent. It would be good to have a super agricultural engineer that works for our company when they are young. Then, when they grow, they leave. It would be great for them to have all those skills, digital skills, communication skills, soft skills, leadership. It's impossible. I think that all those that I mentioned and many more, those are gaining more importance. As to training, we are working a lot with two essential pillars in the new era. Uh, that is action-based training, that is training them as they do it. I approach an issue I have right now and I obtain a benefit. And then, based on what I really need, the training tends to do that. Of course, there will be trainings that will be standardized at the universities, and the colleges will keep working the way they do, but the changes tend to that, specific trainings, and see what the person really is good at in order to improve it even more. So in what we do is to try to find a place for the person. And very often that leads to not working with just one employer, but with two. Perhaps one is good for the social media, another one for image processing. And I'm speaking a lot about my own situation, but this can be applied anywhere. Find the potential in everybody and try to maximize it. And today, with technology, the issue of training, the specific training and action-based training is in a very good position now with AI. I like giving examples, and I like sharing what happens to me. The first boy that worked with us, because apart from training, we also provide services, precision agriculture and monitoring in our region, soil diagnosis. And I worked at INTA for 20 years, and I always looked up at a programming software, Google Earth Engine, and I knew it was a wonderful tool, but I never had the time to learn how to use it. When I hired the first engineer for the company, I didn't lie to him. I am not lying. I told him what I imagined, and just 1 week later, it was ready. Data crossing, I mean, all the things that are mentioned now about uh, processing large volumes of data. And that interaction between experienced people and people that are good learners, that is very important. We have technology to maximize that, and these are steps that we need. Technology gives us steps so that we don't need to start from scratch. Many things are already there. And the other thing is that is what in turn makes it makes that high turnover dangerous. I have to change my mindset and think, as it was so easy for him to learn what he liked, I also have to make it easier for his or for their substitute, because that is part of everybody's evolution. We train people for them to help society. If I'm training people for them to stay, to stuck in my company, I'm not feeling my goal. Well, that's your big challenge, right? The company's development plan should match the individual's development plan. That would be a way to minimize turnover, but it's true. They have to converge. I'm sure Enriqueta has a lot to say about this. About talent, I like what Victor Kupler said. He says that the value of individuals is knowledge plus skill times attitude. So for the future, instead of the attitude being a multiplier, it's exponential. I mean, what is increasingly being looked for in talent has to do with attitude, because we will need people that can, you know, stop and think when something doesn't work, critical thinking, everything that has to do with being able to fail and stand again, empathy, teamwork, seeing where each one is contributing their value, moving forward. We have to unlearn many things, which is not easy either. And actually, in what you were saying, that today suddenly we have people over 50 that you see they have an attitude, they want to learn, and that you don't see that in many young people. So it's not always knowledge and skills. I think that attitude is what is now modifying this approach to talent. And then about the training, I think that soft skills, I mean, it's like you go to a technological world where, in order to combine that technology, we're going to need a lot of soft skills. There, we put an emphasis also on bridging the generational gap in order to create multidisciplinary teams. Yeah, the knowledge with somebody that has the skill, or I have a lot of skill here and a lot of knowledge there, and I have to be clear about what I'm good at and what I'm not. I make a lot of effort to organize myself, but that's not innate in me. So if we have organized people in the team, that will help us move uh, farther. So soft skills, we are putting a focus there, and also on bridging the gap. And the other thing that has to do with this, with what you were saying about training on practical things, what we are doing is a cross-training program between companies. The idea is what I'm good at as a company. Well, perhaps I can receive collaborators from other organizations, tell them what we are doing, and they will leave with the idea and say, I can apply this in my company. I will start doing it, and I somebody to counteract with to see, well, if it works or not in practice. How did you do it? Because I got here and I got stuck there. That starts to happen. So I think that starting to rethink how we are trained and developing, so that that talent, as he said, is enhanced. And it's also important to detect what is the key part of the talent for what I'm looking for, because perhaps we are fixed on looking for this, but perhaps it's like the double click. What are the key skills or the key competencies that this role should have? Because after that, I will start looking at another big place that perhaps I was not looking at because it has that and I didn't know about it. That's very clear. And this is in tune with the times we are living in. Well, you mentioned many things. And now, as Juan did, from my perspective, in our team, we are 10 people, administrative clerks, and then all technicians. And it's very dynamic, finding the talent, because as the technical levels internally change, because there are people that feel more comfortable one way or another, but internally we are working on seeing who feels more comfortable, or perhaps they should leave their comfort zone and move forward. For instance, we come out of the technical part. Many of those that work with me do machine adjustments, they work with the operators, but many of them are becoming trainers, and that is what I always wanted, because at some point I have to stop. And then that is talent is not static. You have to retransform it. You have to find it. 10 years ago, I didn't know I wanted to do this. And well, this is where life has put me. But I try to recommend everybody that regardless of what you do and what your team does, train people for crisis situations, for stressing situations where you have to solve a problem and there are 3 or 4 people involved. Well, we are always there. When they call us, it's because there's a problem. So when we go to the field, everybody's upset. That is also a talent, being able to overcome that bad vibe. And we have internal trainings, we have people that coach us, that help us know how to act. And then when I go with my guys, I see that they develop differently because their style or how close they are to the people. That's just, I wanted to add that. Perfect, that was very clear. So the definition and how it can be improved. And something that Enriqueta just mentioned that I thought it was also interesting. How do you think that all this knowledge can sort of leave the company? What about working on networking, collaborative work? It's not outsourcing, but very often there are companies that cannot generate, given their size, they cannot generate their own developments or training. So they train in collaborative networks. How do you see that? Because actually, I think it's something that is becoming more popular in Argentina now. In the 90s, there was a famous model here of production in network without fixed assets. Everything was outsourced. A company was a network of contracts. They didn't have any machinery, any fields. It was just organization. And there, contractors played an important role, and they were the source of innovation. So how do you see this thing of the adoption of technology, but not just within the company, but as a network? You mentioned something like that, Enriqueta.
Sí, habla.
Yeah, we were talking about the learning here, but in terms of professionalization, the world of work shows that possibly in a couple of years, 80% of the collaborators in our organization will be outsourced. So what does this mean? We need to see 2 things for the sector. First, we already have the experience because contractors, since we didn't have the right scale to make some positions professional, they decided to have a third-party scheme of contractors. So for the rest of the areas, today more than ever, we are talking about efficiency, structural costs. So once again, we go back to this issue of how can I make my company more professional from the commercial and admin departments. And a small company cannot have a huge team of professionals drafting reports, etc. All the things that we need for decisions, and of course, technology, because sometimes what happens is that we have a lot of technology, and when we want to take it to the field, we're like, okay, how can I implement this with my current team? So I believe that this is a model where we need to start exploring and not maybe choosing it 100%, but start exploring it, you know? I have my third party or outsourced administration department. You know, I found someone that I trusted because they're already doing this somewhere else. Well, we are doing this with HR too in companies because it's hard to have one person 100% of the time doing this in an agricultural company. Therefore, what we do is to outsource this. And also in terms of technology, we are starting to see outsourced services for someone to come and gather the information. And well, probably the guys here can offer better information. Okay, we only have 5 minutes left. We carry out investment analysis for people who want to purchase technological equipment. This could be for contractors, business people, farmers, whoever. So when doing this, sometimes the equation is not right, or the repayment is complicated, or considering the amortization, the situation becomes more complicated. And then that's when partnerships or networks come into play. We are talking about contractor-farmer partnerships, which seems spectacular to me. And I don't know whether if you can maintain the contractor in the field all the time, but at least you can help them acquire technology, and then through work, they can repay that technology without avoiding them or not letting them to go play or to go work somewhere else. Because sometimes what happens is that they invest in technology because they got the fund somewhere else, and then they end up having machines that they cannot fix or they cannot pay the installment, or technologically they are left behind because they cannot reinvest. And another key aspect here is contractor-worker partnerships. Yesterday, I was here talking with people from the Contractors Federation of Argentina, and I was asking them to tell me success stories that they had. And they told me this case. I have 6 planting machines and 6 harvesters, and it's my cousin and myself. It's almost a $10 million capital, so how do you think that I can work on that? Well, the way in which I do it is to make workers my partners. I train them, I invest money and time in training them, and when they are committed, if they go away, they become a competitor. So I capture them, I incorporate a corporation or a company, and I make them a part of the company. And why is it that I'm here now? He was telling me, because the other guy is in charge of the team, and since they are a part of the team, they are truly committed, and they help me make decisions. I don't know if they get into rates and that or fees, but they do help with talent capture, or they help me when purchasing new pieces of equipment. So those partnerships allow for the talent to stay longer in companies and generates, yeah, and that won't be a constraint for your growth. Yeah, I believe that working as a network is hard because we work with knowledge. And in this regard, I would say that people might be, I don't know, jealous, about the knowledge of others. Of course, we have professors that are happy to share their knowledge. But when it comes the time to share knowledge, people are like, what I know, I won't share with you. Or if I partner with you, you will already know how much it took me to learn all of this or how hard it was. And it's different when the partnership is in machinery. We pay 50-50, and then it's easier because it's 50-50 for everything, and that's fine. But the thing with knowledge, that's hard for me to work as a network or to partner with others. And in reality, I feel like we need to try and give potential and create synergies among us. Because what we are defending in terms of knowledge very, very soon will be available just by clicking on something or pressing on a key. So let's go into the democratization of knowledge, because people say that AI will take us to the democratization of knowledge. And is that an elegant way to say that I'm going to be stealing the knowledge of others because I'm going to be programming and using Gemini or ChatGPT script? It's because someone worked very hard in order to do it. So This is something that we should talk at some point, but partnerships and sharing knowledge, I feel like it's a little bit more complicated, yeah. But it would take us to an explosive synergy. It would be interesting. Yeah, without a doubt. And I believe that it is a challenge because this is something that could really have potential. Well, I'm looking at the clock and we don't have much time left, but I wanted to say something. As a conclusion, we could say that we are facing a new technological era. And there is something happening now that has not happened before, where technology and machines and systems are very important. However, people are going to be even more important because they are the ones that will give potential to all those technological elements. And when analyzing these scenarios in our business school, we conclude that the value of companies doesn't come from the tangible assets, the machines and technology, but from the intangible, which is knowledge, routines, and their internal environment, which is what helps people develop. And it's very good to minimize turnover because people want to grow, but the great challenge is to be able to retain these talents and for growth to be shared between the company and those working in it. So thank you very much to the speakers and thank you to all of you. And I'm sorry that it's a little bit too late. Bye-bye. See you later.